This week's show brought to you by Roosters, a fun casual joint. Frank Shoup, Georgetown's big name in cars.
Welcome, everybody, to the Scott County Cardinals News Graphic Football Coaches Show. We have reached Week 10, the final week of the regular season. We will get to the playoff schedule here in a little bit, but first we want to talk about last week's win over Paul Lawrence Dunbar in Lexington at Acres Stadium. It was expected to be a blowout, and it was, but maybe not on the same level that you might have predicted before the game based on comparing scores with other teams. It was just a strange night in a lot of ways. It was typical for Scott County. They got scored four touchdowns right in the first quarter on their first four possessions, as has kind of been the rule lately, to take a 28-0 lead. And there was a serious injury to a Dunbar player, a broken leg, a young man by the name of Tyler Browning. If for some reason he's watching, we hope he's getting well quickly. It kind of just changed the whole atmosphere of the game, changed the tone of the game, certainly for Coach Jim McKee, as he, I don't think, wanted to subject any of his key players to anything of the sort down the stretch. So even as Scott County was driving to potentially a touchdown to create a running clock, he pulled the starters out. It was a night where the second string and some of the JV and younger players, even a freshman, got in there. A lot of young kids got some playing time, and that's been a struggle for most of the season. When he's put that second unit in, things have kind of sputtered. A lot of times it's because they're going up against the other team's starters, and that was a factor for a little while on Friday night against Dunbar. But as things wore on in the second half, that group was able to score a couple of touchdowns and put away a 42-8 victory, almost a shutout. Scott County hasn't had a shutout in a couple of years. The Cards gave up a score with about 6 minutes left, and that kept that from happening. But it was one of those nights where you want to win, you want to stay healthy, and you wanted to move on, and SC did that. They are 7-2, still ranked consensus top 5 team in the state, and now they go up against another team that's in that conversation in Pleasure Ridge Park. PRP plays. They're in Louisville. They're part of that Louisville district. That they're not part of Trinity's district, but they are part of the male St. X group. So they have their work cut out for them to get to the playoffs. For Scott County, it's a chance to play against a good team. They did this last couple of years, as you may remember. They played Covington Catholic. That game dropped off the schedule this year, but Pleasure Ridge Park picking them up in a good spot, because had Dunbar the week before, then PRP this week, and then the off week. The bye week comes before the playoffs, and it's going to be a good chance to play the Panthers, a team that's been in there with some of the state's best. They played 4 teams that are ranked in the top 10 in 6A already, and they've also played Bowling Green, the 5A state champion. They've got Louisville Central, a perennial power, in 3A next week. So they, being where they're from, have no choice but to play a lot of tough teams, and iron sharpens iron, so that's going to be a good opponent for Scott County as they head into the playoffs. Let's talk a little bit about the playoffs. Of course, they're going to have that week off, get everybody healthy. That's the sales pitch from Coach McKee, and he's right. It's a good chance to kind of reload and take a long look at what's ahead in November. Looks like Clark County will be the first playoff opponent. That's not official yet, but it's kind of a funny situation, because GRC kind of begged off that series. They'd been on the business end of some one-sided defeats the past few years, had played in the regular season, and decided not to sign that contract this year. Now it looks like that's going to be the first-round opponent at Toyota Stadium. In fact, the first 3 games will be at Toyota Stadium. It looks like the next 2 after that could be district opponents. There's a chance it could be Lafayette and Frederick Douglass back-to-back. Actually, Lafayette's not a district opponent, but opponent they're familiar with from the Lexington area, I should say, and one that the rivalry is pretty strong. So we'll see how that plays out. Madison Central is also in that mix, and there's no guarantees. Henry Clay is a good team. They could knock off a team from that in that first round and get in there. So we will see how that goes as we go forward. But it's a challenging schedule, but one that I think Scott County can navigate as they get toward the end of November and hope to get where they want to go. We, of course, talked to Coach McKee about Pleasure Ridge Park. We got a few words about Dunbar. We didn't belabor that point too much because it was the game that we expected to see. But Pleasure Ridge Park, a good opponent with at least one D1 commit on their roster. Let's see what Coach McKee had to say about the Panthers.
Scott County jumped out early, as expected, in the Dunbar game.
Well, I think that those games are challenging from the aspect that, you're the obvious favorite. Upsets do happen in all sports, whether you're in the backyard, throwing horseshoes with somebody beating 100 times, they're going to beat you. But I thought we handled it from a real mature perspective, came out immediately ready to go and took care of business right away.
The Cards took advantage of the opportunity in a lopsided game to get younger players into the contest.
Well, I think the thing that's a little bit different than for football than maybe baseball or other sports that people are familiar with, football's a numbers game. So when we come out here and play or come out here and practice on a Tuesday, we need a scout team offense, a scout team defense. We need people holding bags. We've got to have backup players. So that's a great opportunity. Obviously, we could have won the game by more points than we did win the game by had we chosen to, but we purposely didn't get to the running clock in the first half so that they could play. And everybody likes to play. You might not want to admit it, but you're a little bit happy you get to ask some questions this week instead of being behind the camera. And we all like a different challenge, and it was good to see those guys get out there. And it's just like me. I'm never going to coach UK or Alabama or to the next step in the NFL. So, but my Friday nights are just important to me as the Green Bay Packers Sunday afternoon is to them. So, for those guys, some of them might not ever get to play be varsity starters, but they got some playing time. It's a very rewarding feeling as a coach when you see that happen.
Joe Logan spent 8 weeks recovering from a fractured foot. He returned on Friday night.
Well, one thing that is a part of every aspect of athletics, and sometimes a little bit more so in football, is injuries. It's the worst part, especially when you think about a guy, no matter what sport he's playing, that's prepared for his senior year, for in some cases maybe 10 or 12 years of playing that sport, and then to get hurt in the first preseason scrimmage is tough. So really proud of Joe for hanging in there, didn't quit, didn't give up, got himself in a position where he's back, and we're working him super hard, trying to get 8 weeks worth of work out of him in 8 days to get him ready for the playoffs. But proud of Joe, and it's good. And the guys that went in and played for him, Peyton Saunders started a lot of the games for him while he was gone, and Lakeland Eads, they got more experience as a result of that. They should be better players next year.
The Scott County defense limited Dunbar to 7 first downs and under 150 total yards.
Well, we're settled into our positions for the most part of who's going to play where defensively, and I don't think the defense or the defensive coaches or myself are satisfied with where the defense is. I don't think we're satisfied with where the offense or the kicking game is. I think the key is constant improvement. We've got to, for lack of a better term, and without trying to sound like one of the new in vogue leadership books or something, but you got to kind of reinvent yourself every day. You got to come out. I challenged them today. Try to have the best football practice you've ever had today, and hopefully tomorrow. But the defense played well. They'll have a big challenge this week against PRP. They're athletic. They're fast. Their quarterback's good. Their wideouts committed to Western. Their tailback's good. Their line's big. So hopefully our defense will continue to progress.
PRP is a tough, athletic, and battle-tested opponent.
They're talented. They're good. They're the third best team that we've played. I think LaSalle and Moeller are probably better than they are, although they're probably a little bit more talented than LaSalle and Moeller. LaSalle and Moeller are just such traditional powers, and those kids have been coached so well from such a young age forward. The PRP's a good football team. Their schemes are pretty sound offensively and defensively. They're very dangerous in the kicking game. They've returned several kicks and punts for touchdowns. It should be a lot of fun. I don't want to say the game doesn't matter. I don't want to belittle your interview and say, this doesn't matter, because everything does matter. But at the end of the day, it's not going to determine whether or not our season's over, and we're going to get to play somebody that's really good again and try some things that we'd like to use in the playoffs and see if they're going to work. So it's better off to figure out if they're going to work when it's not life or death than when it's in a life or death situation.
This week's game is an ideal challenge before the Cards' open date heading into the playoffs.
Well, it's not perfectly by design, meaning, I can't just lay out the exact schedule I want, nor is it what the NFL gets, which is somebody hands you your schedule. Right. So it's kind of in between that. We kind of have to, we've got some give and take. and where we can have our open day, but we also at the same time just sort of have to take whoever play us. We wanted to keep Covington Catholic on a schedule for whatever reason. You know, they didn't want to do that anymore. We thought it was a great game. It was close. They are very good, and then we luckily lucked into PRP, different kind of team, but same type of thing. So we think it's great to play a really good team. Then we'll have our open date next week. So, I mean, knock on wood, unless somebody had a very, very serious injury, they should be ready to go by the playoffs because they'll have 2 weeks to get ready.
Scott County's junior varsity players will get most of the work during the bye week.
Well, you know, what I've found with the bye week is I always come up with the schedule and hand it out to the kids before the game going into the bye week, because I don't want to let our performance on Friday impact what we're going to do next week. Or, you know, when you make you don't play very well and then you make a decision kind of at the heat of the moment and by gosh, we got to do this. So, you know, I've already handed all the information out to the guys, and we play male in a JV game on Saturday, October 29th here. We're undefeated. I don't know what male's JV record is, but I'm sure it's good. So we're going to work our young guys on Tuesday and Thursday. We're out of school on the 27th of October, so it really times up great for us. We'll work our older guys one day next week on Wednesday. We'll have a great practice with our older guys. We'll work our younger guys on Tuesday and Thursday. You know, one thing real quick, and I know you all are on a time schedule, just a quick shout out to our freshman team. Those guys started off a little rough. We lost our opening freshman game for the first time in a zillion years. At one point in time, we actually had lost 3 freshman games. They have hung in there, not gotten their head down, not listened to the naysayers, gotten a ton better, and have won 3 in a row and are 5-3 right now with 2 to go. So it's a great lesson for those guys and for all of us. You know, a loss doesn't define you. A black eye doesn't define you. It'll get well, learn from it, and try to duck the next time the punch comes.
All right, good words from Coach as always. He's had a great season with the varsity. He got some of those young kids in there. He's excited about that. He's one of those coaches that always has the long-term view. He always likes to look ahead and see what's coming, and it seems to be no stopping point here as Scott County continues to build one of the strongest programs in the state. 2 guys who were a big part of that picture and big part of that success. Joe Logan expected to be a bigger part of the success. He broke his foot in the central scrimmage, and unfortunately as a senior, that puts you out for most of your season. Triumphant return last week against Dunbar. On a night where not a lot of starters played much time, he spent the whole game out there kind of getting back in the scheme of things and getting his win back. I mean, that was the biggest challenge for him. He'll talk a little bit about that. And Burke Watts has been the key for the defense, runaway leading tackler for the Cardinals this year. He's out there alone without his brother Cooper, but he's handling himself quite well. Let's see what Joe and Burke had to say about the season so far and the week ahead.
Joe Logan suffered a freak injury in the final scrimmage against Louisville Central. It has been a long process to get back into game shape.
Basically, I think we were about on the 30, and I was doing a tackle trap pass, well, tackle trap play. So I was running behind the line, and I stepped on somebody's heel as they were coming up, and it just snapped my 5th metatarsal and caused the Jones fracture. So it put me out for about 8 weeks. It was devastating for me, honestly. They said 6 weeks, but in that 6-week time frame, I was not fully healed yet, so we had to go about 3 more weeks. I didn't do really much of rehab. All I did was really just try to ride a bike and just get my calf back in motion. But my bone was fully healed by the time I got my boot off. I feel like I will be 100%. I'm still working on my breath right now. I was coming back in, I was very out of shape, and I had to just get my conditioning back in. But for the playoffs, I think I will be 100%.
The Dunbar game was a tough one for Scott County to gauge its own performance.
Altogether, we played as good as we could, and I feel like the outcome was what I expected.
We did good. It wasn't really a good team, so we couldn't judge ourselves really off of them, but we did good, and it was what I thought it was going to be. Blowout.
Burke has thrived as the only Watts on the field this year for Scott County.
It is different being out there without him because I sort of relied on him since he's my brother, and it's just gotten stronger, and I'm faster than I was last year, I think, so it's easier to make tackles and plays.
Pleasure Ridge Park is Scott County's strongest opponent in more than a month.
I feel like it's going to be a great game to play. It'll be a great experience for everybody. It'll be a great challenge. We need a game like this to prepare us for the playoffs.
Let's go, lineman!
It'll be, like I said, it'll be an amazing game to play. I think my biggest challenge will be their defensive line because they have some great players on their line. So it'll be a challenge for the whole offensive line.
PRP's pretty good. We've watched some film on him. And the toughest thing would be containing their quarterback because he's a little slippery.
4 consecutive wins have the Cards primed for another playoff run.
I think that we're doing great so far heading into the playoffs. We've played great. We just need to work on all of our conditioning.
We just need to practice more. Practice makes perfect. Special teams, offense and defense, get those all perfect so we can actually go to Kroger Field and play to compete.